This is ContraZoom, where we go back and forth about film. I'm Dakota Arsenault, and it's that time of year finally. We are a week away from the Academy Awards, and we have our annual Oscar predictions. For the last 4 weeks, I podcasted about all the Best Picture nominees and had our yearly Oscar draft. I wrote about the remaining 24 feature-length films nominated for Oscars in my Oscar Primer blog series, and now is time to put my middling reputation on the line. Joining me today as we pretend to be experts helping you win that Oscar pool at your office is Elizabeth Malloy, who runs the publication The Celluloid Correspondent, a film and TV review site, and is a contributor to the weekly Volcano, a Tacoma, Washington publication. She is also one of the newest members to the Cascadia Film and Television Critics Association. Welcome to the show for the very first time, Elizabeth. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Dakota. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'd love to know, what's your sort of like history with the Oscars? Do you watch every year? How involved do you get with them?
I guess you say when I was younger, I wasn't really that involved with the Oscars. I more so just kind of saw it as an award that prestigious movie folks voted on. But when I started to get more and more into film, I began to see the importance of it. Um, I always go by the quote from Ron Swanson in Parks and Recreations. Awards are stupid, but they are less stupid when they're given to the right people. So, with the Academy Awards, it's when someone rightfully wins an Oscar, it is truly a great moment. But when the Oscars get it wrong, it's a bit of a mess. But I do like the Oscars for what they stand for.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. Like, we're all aware awards are silly and have no real bearing. But, it is nice when our favorites do win. And it also sort of provides a great sort of time capsule to what the movie year was like. So, 5, 10, 50 years from now, when we're looking back at the 2025 movies, 2025 Oscars rather, it might say something, grander about what this era was like.
Yes, definitely.
And, be able to chastise them for completely ignoring challengers.
Yes, I am absolutely pissed off that they just completely glossed over challengers.
Yes. Well, before we get into the show itself, I'd be remiss not to point out something big. I'm not one for tooting my own horn, but this is the 300th episode of ContraZoom, and that's kind of a big deal to me. I started the show way back in 2015, and while it took a while to find our footing, I never really felt like I made it. I can't help but marvel at the big picture of it all. Over 15,000 downloads since I switched podcast host back in 2019, with almost 50,000 views on YouTube. So thank you to anyone who has ever been a co-host, guest, participant for my silly surveys, listener, watcher, follower, and more. You all help shape and grow this show and me. I'm sure if you're listening to this, you probably already are a subscriber, but if you are not, please take a moment and subscribe and rate the show on your platform of choice. And as I always say at the end of each episode, if you really like the show, consider tipping me on coffee. A link is in the show notes and on the homepage of ContraZoomPod.com. It helps me pay for hosting fees and investing into making the show's quality even better. But that's enough about me, and let's get back to the show. As I work my way through the Oscar death race, as I do every year, right now I sit at 45 out of 50 films. All I have left are all 5 documentary shorts. The reason being is 4 of them are very easy to find, but one of them is not available anywhere. You can't pay for it. You can't stream it anywhere, nothing like that. So I am foregoing and withholding until I go and see the nominated documentary shorts all together at the theater. Unfortunately, that won't be until, I think, by the time this episode comes out, I will have seen it. But as of the time of recording, I have not. Elizabeth, how's your sort of Oscar race going? Do you try to watch all of the films, or do you just, watch what you can and enjoy what you do?
So I try to watch what I can. The one category that I always seem to miss would be the shorts. So the
Mm-hmm.
documentary, animated, and live action short. Those are just really hard to find unless you go specifically to a theater that's showing them. And of course, I'm going to be out of town when they're going to be showing them, so I'm going to miss. But I have seen a couple of them. And I've seen a good chunk of the documentary features. That's also a category that I miss a few on, but I always typically see the one that eventually wins the Oscar. But for everything else, I've pretty much seen everything except for I think Girl with the Needle and I think the new Wallace and Gromit are the only two major films I haven't seen yet, sadly.
Okay. Well, if you get the chance to watch Wallace and Gromit, it's a hilarious time. It's on Netflix too, so it's super easy. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, I've been procrastinating on it. I haven't seen any of the other Wallace and Gromit films, so I'm like, oh boy, I need to do a little bit of catch up before I hit Vengeance Most Foul.
It's a self-contained story. It's a British man and his dog, and he invents things. That's really all you need to know.
Okay.
All right, so the way this is going to work is we are both going to name the movie we think will win, and then of the nominated films, which one was our favorite? So we're just sort of going to keep it contained to just those two who will win and who should win, just to keep it tight. So we're going to go sort of in order that I have on my computer here, and I'll sort of lead off each one, and then you and I can kind of take turns of who goes first to talk about it. But let's start with the big one. We're going to start with big picture. I know best picture. I know I probably should have saved this till the end, but let's give the people what they want, and then they could turn this episode off afterwards if they really feel like it. This is such an interesting category this year because there isn't a dominant film like Oppenheimer where we knew 2 months before the Oscars being like, oh yeah, Oppenheimer's winning. You don't even really need to think about it. It's more who the hypothetical second place is in this race. I sort of have three films I think could win. Realistically, it's probably down to two. But I don't know. Like, I'm sticking with the Brutalist as who I think will win because I don't know if the last minute sway of Anora doing really well is enough to overcome it. Whereas, we spent a good portion of the Oscar race as the Brutalist being the front runner. So I'm not too sure if I'm being stubborn or what, but oftentimes I feel like I've done this seems to be the buzzy one. Let's switch my vote, and I ended up kicking myself and like, oh, why didn't I just stick with what the front runner was the whole time? So I'm sticking with the Brutalist for now, expecting to have egg on my face for getting this wrong. But my favorite of the group is Conclave. I really love that movie. It was just such a fun political intrigue thriller, which is one of my favorite types of movies. But what about you, Elizabeth? What do you think will win, and who do you think should win?
So I agree with you that this is definitely a sort of three-way race between Anora, the Brutalist, and because BAFTA chose violence, I would say Conclave now.
Uh huh.
Um, but given kind of everyone's, word of mouth, how every single film really has a passionate fan base, and the one that seems to be the most passionate outside of Brazil with I'm Still Here, I would say would be
Mm.
Anora. That got PGA, DGA, WGA. It got Best Casting at BAFTA, and then Mikey Madison won BAFTA for Best Actress. So I think Anora is looking like the clear frontrunner right now.
Hmm.
Who I think should win should be Dune Part 2. I mean,
Ooh.
that is legitimately one of the best science fiction, not just one of the best science fiction films of all time, but, one of the best films of the year. I am still pissed about Demi being snubbed for Best Director and just it completely underperforming at this year's Oscars is infuriating.
Yeah, it's really crazy, and it's one of those things. I feel like I've talked about it a few times on the podcast last month. Is what's going to happen with Dune Messiah, the third part of this story? Are they going to Return of the King it, where they're going to give it a bunch of awards, or does the Academy just not really care for science fiction, which seems to be the case? Because while we could talk about Return of the King, that wasn't science fiction, that was fantasy, and while fantasy also doesn't do great at the Oscars traditionally, uh, science fiction does even worse, really. So I have no idea how they're going to treat it. But I love your boldness of picking Anora, and that's the one where I think I'm sort of kicking myself in the pants of, am I being stubborn, or should I follow the way the winds are shifting?
Yeah, understandable. Like I have a feeling Nora has, I think, maybe the clearest path forward. But yeah, this year it's such an open field. It's really kind of hard.
It might be one of those things where, maybe halfway through the night, we'll sort of see the way things have been going, and that's going to reveal, who's going to be the eventual winner. Like, if either the Brutalist or Anora starts racking up wins, in screenplay or score or editing, things like that, that might, if one of them is going, 3-0 in one side and the other one's being blank so far, that might, give credence to which one ends up being the eventual winner of the night.
Yeah, I think once we get to, I think probably screenplay and maybe even editing might be like kind of the first indicators on who will eventually walk away with Best Picture that night.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. Okay, well, let us go on next to Best Director. Let's start with you. Who do you think will win, and who do you want to win?
Let's see. So, Best Director is also just as difficult to predict for Best Picture, given that right now it's pretty much a two-man race between Brady Corbet and Sean Baker. And Brady Corbet has been doing really well amongst critic circles, and then he eventually won the Golden Globe, and then most recently BAFTA, while Sean Baker won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, and then he eventually pushed through to winning DGA and just continuing to rack up awards. So this one I am absolutely split on because I think it is possible to see a split between picture and director this year, where picture and director are different. They pick two different people. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the directors of the Academy want to give Sean Baker his due. He's been working in the industry for decades, and he's finally getting his due. So I have a feeling that Sean Baker might get this award. He might take home the Oscar that night. Who I think should win should be Coralie Farjot for The Substance. I absolutely, yeah,
Nice. Yeah.
I absolutely love The Substance. I love the batshit energetic direction that entire film had, and it was really a body horror like no other. So I really think she should win this, but as long as it's not James Mangold or Jacques Audiard, I would be pretty happy.
Fair enough. I'm sort of in a very similar boat as you. Going along with my prediction of the Brutalist winning Best Picture, I think this is going to be another year where the director and picture are split because I also think Sean Baker is going to be the winner here. I could also see the flip side of it where, Honora wins Best Picture and Corbet wins Director. I can literally, I can picture both of things happening. That's how close I think this race is between these two films at this point. My hesitation to thinking Anora is going to win Best Picture is the Academy has never really given such a sex positive film a Best Picture, and so I wonder if they're still a little too conservative in their voting, and they're like, oh, we'll give Sean Baker an Oscar for directing, but maybe not Anora specifically for Best Picture. And so that's sort of my rationale where I think Baker can win there. And you're right, he has been working for a long time, and this is obviously his most mainstream movie so far, and even that, this isn't really a mainstream film by regular Hollywood standards. It is for the the indie crowd, the arts pictures crowd, things like that. People that follow what movies win the Palme d'Or at Cannes. This is the type of movie that you will have likely seen. So I think Sean Baker is probably the front runner here. But I agree with you in the want, and it's Coralie Farge for me too, where I want her to win, just because I love how bold her vision and her choices were. That I think it would be a pretty great win for her, especially considering there's really no shot in hell that The Substance is winning Best Picture. So this would be a pretty cool win if she ended up getting it, but not that I think that'll actually happen, unfortunately.
I absolutely agree.
All right, let us go to Best Actor. And while it isn't as quite of a runaway train as some of the other acting races, this one might be the most up in the air. I still think I'm pretty confident that Adrian Brody is going to win Best Actor for The Brutalist. regardless of how the Brutalist does in picture and director, I think he probably has this locked up. I know his closest competition is Chalamet, um, but I think Chalamet needs to have a role where he is the de facto frontrunner, not someone that could, be a spoiler. I don't think this is a strong enough narrative for him. So I don't think it's his year yet. But Adrian Brody is my pick for who I think will win, and then my favorite of the group is probably Coleman Domingo from Sing Sing. I think this is actually a pretty stacked category this year, and I really like a lot of the nominees and their performances. I think Sebastian Stan maybe got nominated for the wrong film, even though I do think he's great in The Apprentice. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, Coleman Domingo, I absolutely loved Sing Sing. It kind of destroyed me watching it, and he did such a great job in it.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree. Adrian Brody is taking this Oscar home for The Brutalist. I mean, Chalamet might win SAG, but I don't think that's going to have any effect on how it performs on Oscar night. Now, of the nominees, my personal pick would actually be Ray Fiennes.
Mm.
I think it's a very subtle and very quiet performance. I just, and also he's a little bit overdue, so that's also part of the, why I think he should win.
Mm-hmm.
I just think his performance is subtle acting that just doesn't really get enough, I guess you could say, recognition by the Academy. They like the more over the top, transformative performance instead of these more quiet and subtle performances. And I think with Fine's case, you can just literally see the weight of the world on his shoulders throughout Conclave as he's trying to navigate the complex politics of the Vatican. However, my personal pick, who is not actually nominated here, I'm so sorry if I mispronounce his last name, would be Keith Kefferer for Ghostlight.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's one I haven't caught up with yet, but I've heard great things about it.
He was nominated for the Gotham and for the Independent Spirit Award for Best Actor. And I think his performance, like Fiennes, is very quiet and so subtle, and yet without saying anything, just with his face and just the micro little expressions, you can see just the layers of grief just weighing him down. And it's just such a quiet, soft performance. And when he finally has that moment where he kind of just lets it rip, it is absolutely heartbreaking as it is beautiful. And I mean,
Well, that
it's a beautiful performance, and I knew he wasn't gonna get nominated for an Oscar, but I really hope that Ghostlight will open up the door for him.
Yeah, it often seems, the case where you'll have like a highly regarded indie film that like does really well with the, critic circles or awards that are more geared to independent films, things like that, where maybe like a year or two later they sort of have their big breakout and you're like, "Hey, remember this movie from a couple years ago? You should definitely watch it because this person is terrific."
Yeah, I mean, he got I saw this at the Seattle International Film Festival, and there were only two standing ovations. One of them was for Black Box Diaries for obvious reasons, and the second one was for him with Ghostlight. He was there at the premiere, and he ended up
Oh,
winning
wow.
Best Actor at the festival. So,
Nice. Yeah, I was very briefly at SIF last year. I went for 2 days, so I didn't see very many things.
so yeah, I mean, he was fantastic.
Well, that's great to know. I will have to add that to my watch list. Let us go to our best actress category, and so it sort of seemed like actually, let's start with you. What were your thoughts on the best actress category?
Well, let's see. Given that BAFTA again shows violence, so I think now because BAFTA went with Mikey Madison, it's now gone back to sort of a two leading ladies race between Demi Moore and Mikey Madison. Um, I think both of them are absolutely fantastic in their respective performances. Demi Moore just absolutely great with just the madness and the self-hatred that she shows, and then just the powerhouse that Mikey Madison is. However, I think once we get an idea what SAG picks, because if Mikey gets SAG, then Mikey, I think, will most likely take home the Oscar. But if Demi wins SAG, then Demi's going to walk home with that Oscar. And right now, I think I am still leaning towards Demi Moore, simply because she has that sort of narrative, that overdue narrative of, was a big, actress in the 90s and then just kind of faded out. And then now, she's back again with this huge film that, is very much reminiscent on her own career. So I think the Academy will most likely go with Demi Moore. However, my personal pick would be Mikey Madison for Anora.
Nice, yeah. I like that. I When I watched Anora the first time, I wasn't crazy about it, especially compared to how much I appreciated Sean Baker's previous films. But on my second watch of it, I really liked it a lot more and appreciated her performance a lot more too. So I absolutely hear what you're saying there. I agree with you. I think Moore is still the front runner. I know there's that brief moment of maybe Fernanda Torres is the actual competition for Moore to play, but it seems like Moore sort of regained control. And considering the Academy's absolute hatred of giving an Oscar to people under the age of 35, let's say, I unfortunately don't think Mikey Madison has a shot. I think this might be her, or sort of maybe Jennifer Lawrence coming out party where she needs to have a couple more similar parts of this caliber and then maybe get an Oscar. So I still think it's going to be Demi Moore that wins here. Just her narrative is so strong. But I also think Moore is my favorite of the group. I really liked what she was doing. Mikey Madison was probably my runner up for second favorite. But yeah, I think it's Moore's to lose here at this point. Where maybe the lead actors, they're both kind of in that like 70-30 range of 70% we're pretty sure who's going to win, but maybe there's a little bit of a spoiler there.
Yeah, it's who knows? It's given the Academy's history, they typically go with the veteran over the
Mm-hmm.
newcomer. So I have a feeling that this will most likely go to Moore, and there is no doubt that she absolutely deserves this.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's go to Best Supporting Actor. And here it seems like it is the easiest lock of the night. If you bet on the Oscars, don't even bother betting on this category because you're not going to win any money because Kieran Culkin has won literally every single award leading up to this and seems to have been crowned the winner, months ago. As soon as A Real Pain hit the festival circuit, it was like, nope, we have our winner for Best Supporting Actor, which is frustrating because it's absolute category fraud. He is a co-lead, and something I know you are actually in agreement with me, and I don't actually have to argue about why he's a co-lead.
Yeah,
So I appreciate that.
you're goddamn right.
And then same goes with Zoe Saldana, supporting actress, Ariana Grande, and supporting actress. They're all leads. Like, come on, like, what are we doing here? And then who I want to win, I'm gonna say Yura Borisov from Anora. That was the thing that stood out for me on that first watch. Even though I wasn't crazy about the film overall, I was like, I really like this guy. He gave a great performance. I sort of appreciated how when we first are introduced to him, he's this sort of we look at him as this dumb thug. And then the more we learn about him and the more he sort of shows himself, which is in very, very small doses. He's always in the background. Every once in a while, he'll sort of chime in with a line or two, always making me laugh. And then by the end of it, he has this great moment with Mikey Madison where the two of them have a very intimate moment where it isn't really what either of them wanted or expected. And the sort of fallout of that moment is, I think, it just absolutely terrific acting. And so he was my favorite of the category.
Yep. So, yeah, how do I say this? Igor's husband material. So, um,
Hey, there you have it. Yep.
Igor, yep, husband material. So yeah, Culkin is gonna walk away with this, which very much so disappoints me. It is such blatant category fraud that is just absolutely kind of infuriating. Like, I feel sorry for everybody else in this category
Mm-hmm.
because they're just going to get completely overlooked. Um, so who I think should win, I would be happy with either Guy Pearce for The Brutalist or Jeremy Strong for The Apprentice. I mean, I can't pick between the two, but either one of those actors should absolutely win. I mean, both of them had that fierce intensity, being that, megalomaniac, narcissist, you know, Guy Pearce, with the, megalomaniac, just wants to, God, how would I describe it? My mind is blanking. Wants to be in total control of everything. And, Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn was as just terrifying intensity he had during the first, half of The Apprentice. And when he finally comes in during the last 15 minutes, like, I actually felt sorry for him, which is absolutely remarkable acting on Strong's part to make me feel some form of sympathy for Roy Cohn. So,
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I like these two are some of the strongest villains we've seen in years. Like there is no redeeming quality about either of these people, and it's sort of surprising because the Academy usually shies away from pure villain roles being nominated. Although if they ever do get nominated, it's only in the supporting category. We never get lead villains.
hmm
um, so I completely agree with you. I thought both of their performances were excellent. I really enjoyed both of them,
yeah.
and yeah, the wrong Succession actor is going to win.
Yeah, and I think my personal pick is also another villain. It would be Bill Skarsgård for Nosferatu. Um,
Mm,
just absolutely terrifying on screen, and just very much so a transformative performance. And I mean, you just feel him throughout the entire film. He's absolutely
yeah,
remarkable.
I mean, if anyone could play a villain, it's Bill Skarsgård.
Oh yeah.
That's his bread and butter. All right, well, let us go to supporting actress, and we'll start with your thoughts.
So yeah, there is no question. This is Zoe Saldaña's. And it is, and I mean, I will give her credit. She is the only good thing about Emilia Perez. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
she in any scene she meets at least makes that film somewhat watchable when she's on screen. But this is such a blatant category fraud that is just absolutely infuriating. And even if Ariana Grande wins SAG for Wicked, I think it's not going to have any effect on her. And with all the Emilia Perez controversy, I think Saldana will come away unscathed because she didn't really do anything wrong. Um, but who I think should win of the nominees, I actually think this is actually a pretty weak nominee field because two of the actresses are not really supporting their leads, and then another one's just a cameo performance. I think I would actually go with Monica Barbaro for A Complete Unknown. Um, I
Nice.
really like even though I wasn't a big fan of Complete Unknown, I really like the warmth that she had on screen.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to see her and see her more because I do think this Oscar nomination is going to open her up to so many more performances. So I can't wait to see what she does next. And my personal would be Danielle Deadweiler for The Piano Lesson. Like
Ah,
she got
yes.
just so overlooked by every single award circuit, and it just made me so sad.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. I really enjoyed that film and her performance too. I I'm still not sure how much weight to put behind the Amelia Perez controversies and how much it's going to affect voting. Yes, I do believe that Saldana has come out of this pretty much unscathed. She's come out with a few very strong statements of, I don't represent what Gascon and Odiard have been saying. I believe in love, and she's saying all the right things and all that sort of stuff. I do have to wonder if there's, even a fraction of the voters that go, well, I'm not voting for Amelia Perez for anything now. I don't care. I'm not giving them any of my vote. I do think that's going to happen. It's just a question of whether or not will that be a sizable enough group to change who the winner is. And that's going to be the biggest interesting thing here. I never had Amelia Perez winning a bunch of awards pre-controversy. I only had it maybe at 4 awards, and now I have it at maybe 2. And who knows? Maybe it's going to be either completely unaffected or maybe it's going to be really affected. I don't know. So this is the hardest one to predict I find out of the four acting categories. I do still think Saldaña is going to win, but I wonder if maybe there is that chance of Grande coming through. And I think that'd actually be the funniest thing is I love Ariana Grande's music. Big fan of it. I also really liked her in Wicked. I thought she was very charming and hilarious and did a great job with that, considering she was a child actor but hasn't really done a lot of acting since. I thought she knocked it out of the park for what she was asked to do. Is there a chance for her to steal? I don't know, but that might be the funniest thing that happens on Oscar night if that is the case. So I'm very trepidatious to say I think Zoe Saldana still win because I do think there is potentially going to be an upset here. And then once again, we seem to be in agreement of a lot of things. I agree with you. Monica Barbaro is my pick for who I would want to win. I really loved her in this film. She did great work in Top Gun Maverick, and it was great seeing her here playing such a different character. And she was a great foil to Chalamet's Dylan. I thought she brought a lot of energy and enthusiasm and really helped move the movie along.
Yep, absolutely agree. I think the only thing that will happen, like if Grande wins Wicked, I think that will more so indicate the other categories that Amelia Perez is running in at the
Mhm.
Oscars, sort of the direction that it could be heading.
I'm not too sure how I would view it if Saldana doesn't win. Like, is that just an aberration for this category alone, or is it going to say something bigger about the night overall? Because we get the supporting actors very early on.
Hmm.
Like, I know it's usually like the second and third awards they hand out or something like that. Like, it's pretty early.
Yep. So, yeah, I think they're actually the first two.
Yeah. It's always at the front of the show for sure. Basically, it gives a chance for uh, everyone not named Kieran Culkin to get drunk early in the night.
Hmm. Absolutely.
All right, well, let's go to adapted screenplay. And this, while I like the nominees here, I feel like overall it's maybe a little bit weaker, and so I think it's a pretty safe bet that Conclave is winning. And this might end up being Conclave's only award it wins. But I would be very happy with that. I loved the film, and I've said this story a few times now. As soon as I finished the movie that weekend, I went out and bought the book and read it. And I'm someone that only reads nonfiction. This was my first fiction book in I don't know how many years. Loved it. Loved this. Like it's a very simple story. It's not anything crazy, but I just love the way the suspense is built into this film, and using the politics of the Vatican to craft such an interesting story and give us such exciting drama. So I really appreciated that. Um, I loved it, but I would say that if I was to pick my own winner, I would have to once again go with Sing Sing. It was such a moving piece of filmmaking. I really felt connected with these characters and the power of art healing and rehabilitating these prisoners. This isn't like a Shawshank Redemption situation where they say, "Oh, you're the only guilty person here." No, these people know what they did, and they understand that their actions had consequences, and they're wanting to eventually be allowed back into society. And one way that they realize that they can do this is through the arts, which gives them a chance to understand empathy and teach them about the world and give them an education they may not have gotten. So I really love this script. I thought it was terrific, and it made me cry several times. So that's my picks here. What about you?
So I mean, I agree. Conclave definitely has this in the bag. It's a, sharp, dialogue driven, screenplay, very, incredibly smart, witty at points. I mean, to state it simply, that Conclave got the press screening at TIFF to get a little rowdy is a little understatement. And press screenings are typically dead silence. So it's very impressive to see a film get the whole audience gasping and clapping throughout the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think Conclave has this in the bag, and I think that's a very well deserved win. I like films that are, very meaty with their dialogue, has a lot of dialogue, and knows how to use it correctly. I mean, maybe a potential spoiler for Nickel Boys, but I, and I would like to see Nickel Boys win, but I think this is absolutely Conclave, and I think my adapted screen, I think it would be Conclave as well for my pick.
Ooh.
So maybe like pick would be Nosferatu, but because I think no one can write dialogue like Robert Eggers. He knows how to do that elevated language, like nobody else, and
Hmm.
that period accurate language too.
Yeah, that's definitely his bread and butter. He softened it a bit from The Witch, where you need subtitles on just to be like, what the hell are they saying? I feel like you need a translation subtitles for some of the things that they say in that film. There's still moments where I have no idea what's going on, but he is so great using that sort of old English style writing.
Yeah, like Robert Eggers, if you listen to this, please try to convince the Tolkien estate to give you the rights to the Children of Hurin. Like, sir, you would kick that out of the park. Yeah,
Well, you're in luck. He's an avid listener. He's a subscriber. He sends me messages all the time, being like, "Great job, Dakota. Thumbs up. Keep up the great work." Stuff like that.
it's like, please do the Children of Hurin. That is absolutely up your alley. Please do it.
There you go, Robert. Like, I know you're probably busy on the award circuit, but there you go. There's our plea for you. All right, let's go to best original screenplay. What are your thoughts on who you think will win and should win?
Well, to say that this one has also been equally as chaotic as probably Picture.
Hmm.
So it's like Anora took the WGA, The Substance took Critics' Choice, and then Real Pain took BAFTA. It's really quite up in the air right now. But I think whoever takes original screenplay will most likely go on to winning more awards. So I think most likely Anora will take this. Like if Anora takes original screenplay, it will definitely get Picture.
Mm.
Um, but I do think the substance could do a potential upsets. I mean, that would be huge to see a horror, a genre film actually win a screenplay category would be huge. Just massive step forward for, genre. But I do think that this is Anora. I think it has for like the first, half of the film, it has like this nice warmth, idyllic look, American dream, that warmth, and then how Baker just slowly just strips it away as reality begins to, sit on Annie as she realized that dream is going away. So I think Honora will definitely win this, and I think Honora probably should win this.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've got both Anora and the Brutalist here as the two sort of best picture front runners, and I can see a way where either of them end up actually winning, just because that sometimes happens. The best picture winner could sometimes rise. It's the sort of the rising tide will lift all boats situation, where maybe you'll pick up a couple extra awards where we're not expecting it. So yeah, you might be right that whoever wins this might be the precursor of who ends up winning best picture. And I like your thought about the substance, where I also sort of agree. Is I call it the Pulp Fiction rule, where the Academy will give a screenplay award to a film that they're like, oh, I'm never going to give you Best Picture. There's no way in hell. This is your consolation prize. This is us recognizing you as having the most creative, boldest. We wish we could give you Best Picture award, but we're not actually. So here, take this screenplay award. And for that, I think The Substance has a shot. Like that could be its one win outside of Demi Moore, where they're like, "Hey, we loved your movie. It was great. Here is an Oscar to sort of make you think about that, but we're not giving you Best Picture. And we're not giving you Best Director." So that would be quite the upset. Could that happen? Maybe. I also have Anora winning. I think that it's probably. I, I don't know if I'm fully on board with the idea that it also might lead to picture and director, but it very well could be. But then my want would also be the substance. I just loved it. I know that it's not a dialogue heavy movie. It is more about the imagery in the feelings, in the themes that this movie is trying to evoke, rather than the actual dialogue. Whereas on the flip side, something like Conclave is so dialogue heavy and plot driven in that sense. These are two very different ways to write a script, and it sort of shows off the duality that I really appreciate that movies can offer.
Yeah, I mean, I've read a little bit of the Substance script, and I'm like, damn, Corley must have had just an absolute blast writing this because it is batshit insane.
It feels like it's one of those scripts that, like, you wake up from a dream, this fever dream that you're having, and it's just like a fully formed idea. You know exactly what the thesis is of. You know exactly how you want to sound, and the feeling you get when you're flipping through the pages. It just sort of felt like it was one of those movies. Not to say that she probably didn't work very hard on it. I'm sure she did, and many rewrites and all that great stuff that writers go through. But it feels like one of those ideas that, like, a lightning bolt to the head moment.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let us go to cinematography. And I really, I like this category a little less than I usually do. I think they missed out on some pretty big films. Um, and so I'm frustrated because this is usually my favorite category of the year, tied for like best international film. Of this crop, I think The Brutalist is going to win. There's some absolute stunning shots. We start out with the Statue of Liberty being upside down, and it lets us know what is to come. The sort of the corruption of the American dream, and the lies that Americans are told about what that all means. When you land on Ellis Island as an immigrant, what this statue means to you is upside down, is a perverted image. And then we just get to see some of the most insane, beautiful shots I've ever seen. I still think of the shot when they're in Italy and they're pouring water on the marble. It might be one of the most gorgeous shots from last year alone. So I really appreciate it there. I think there might be some strong competition from Nosferatu. I know that's gotten a lot of love recently. Will it play spoiler? I'm not totally sure. But I would also say that my favorite is probably The Brutalist. I think it's sort of the exact same mirrors, where I think The Brutalist is who I think will win, with Nosferatu being its closest competition, and then my favorite is The Brutalist, with the closest competition being Nosferatu as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is currently a little bit of a two-way race. We'll see once I believe the Cinematography Guild, I believe their awards is, I believe this Sunday. And I think once
Mm-hmm.
that happens, we'll have a very clear picture on who will win. But I think this is a two-way race between Nosferatu and The Brutalist, with Nosferatu taking the Critics' Choice while The Brutalist took home the BAFTA. And
Mm-hmm.
part of me kind of thinks this will be Nosferatu. Um,
Ooh.
Again, I mean, part of me would just be absolutely ecstatic to see a horror film win, best cinematography. Um,
Yep.
but I think it's their use of, all the different. I watched a behind the scenes video of them showing how they created like the unique look where they got that almost black and white look to it. All the different filters that they created. I think this is just a hauntingly beautiful looking film. And I think, the use of Count Orlok's shadow and the movement of that shadow throughout the entire film, especially the shot with his hand going over the city, is just absolutely
Yeah.
haunting. So I think part of me, I kind of want to go with Nosferatu here. But I would not be upset if the Brutalist wins it. But if the Brutalist loses cinematography, then it will not take picture. But I, but for my personal pick, I do think this actually should be Nosferatu. My runner-up would be Dune Part
Okay.
2, but I think this should be Nosferatu.
Yeah, I love the cinematography in Dune Part 2, especially when they're on the Harkonnen planet. Like, that's some creative ass filmmaking
Oh
there.
yeah, the using infrared and then making it black and white. I'm like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That on like an IMAX
Yeah.
screen, like I saw that on 70 millimeter, and I was like, holy shit.
So then, what is your opinion then? You're saying that you think Anora winning screenplay is very good for its odds to win picture, and if Brutalist wins cinematography, also very good. What happens if they both win those awards?
I think it will come down to hmm. I think with the Brutalist, I think that 3.5 hour, that 3.5 hour runtime, I think does hurt it a little bit. But I think if the Brutalist is starting to win in other categories like score, editing, I do think that's showing a higher chance of it winning Best Picture. But I think it comes down to the kind of night that the Brutalist is having. Because if the Brutalist is like losing score, if it's not getting editing, and then if it loses cinematography, then I think that its chances of getting picture are pretty low. But yeah, it's such an open race right now.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. All right, let us move on to documentary. So, what are your thoughts on that category?
So needless to say that this is a very politically charged year for Best Documentary. So I've only seen three of these. I've only seen No Other Land, Sugarcane, and Black Box Diaries. I haven't, or actually, no, I haven't seen Sugarcane, sorry. I've seen Porcelain War, No Other Land, and Black Box Diaries. So I haven't seen Sugarcane or the soundtrack of a coup d'etat yet. So not exactly can't give my full opinion on who I think should win, but I do think that this is in the bag for No Other Land. I think that the Porcelain War could have a potential spoiler in it. If the Christopher Reeves documentary was nominated here, I would say that it would absolutely give No Other Land a run for its money, but I think this is absolutely No Other Land. The footage that the
Mm.
filmmakers were able to capture was, heartbreaking and absolutely remarkable that they were able to capture all of that. But it depends on the how political the Academy wants to be that night, because it is a absolute hot topic to say the least and controversial. So I think No Other Land has this with Porcelain War being a potential spoiler. So because Porcelain War did take home the DGA. So
And then, what would your favorite of the three that you've seen be?
um, ooh, I think actually maybe Black Box Diaries. I saw this one at SIF and the director was there, and just the absolute bravery of investigating your own, sexual assault and trying to have to prove it to the world is not only incredibly brave, but I cannot imagine how traumatizing that would have been to relive that and investigate it. But to do something like that, I think is incredibly powerful and just absolutely courageous. But I would be pretty okay with, I would be totally fine with No Other Land. But I think Black Box Diaries is my personal favorite.
Hmm. Yeah, this category is interesting. The documentaries are probably the hardest branch to understand because it seems like almost at least every other year there'll be a couple front runner documentaries where like, oh, this is definitely getting nominated at the Oscar and probably is going to win, and then doesn't even get a
Hmm.
nomination. This year, I think probably Super Slash Man is the probably the biggest name that didn't get nominated that I think a lot of people would have considered to be a front runner. Um, so luckily everyone in the academy votes on the final winner, but like the nomination branch, it's always just like, what the hell are you guys doing?
Oh yeah, and they also
um
snubbed was it Will and Harper?
yes, yeah. So I know they often will not go for the big Hollywoodized film, and I think having a movie starring Will Ferrell, I guess, was the reason for not nominating that. So I don't know really. So, but in terms of who I think will win, I struggle because I think No Other Land is the most topical film of the group. And usually the most topical film has the best chance of winning, especially when the years are more politically charged than others. You look at years when lighter films have won, whether they're stuff like My Octopus Teacher or Free Solo, where they're not inherently political films quite in the same way something like No Other Land is. Whereas you look at what's going on sorry to say this, as I'm looking at the dumpster fire south of the border from where I live in Canada, it is a more political year, to put it mildly. And No Other Land is definitely the most political.
Hmm.
But I would not be surprised, much like I mentioned earlier, if there will not be a significant portion of Oscar voters who you can read between the lines of what I'm about to say will not vote for this movie
Yeah, absolutely.
based on principle. And it's a question of how many of those voters are there. So I think No Other Land is the favorite to win, but I'm only putting it at like, a 35-40% chance of winning. It's not like, oh, Zoe Saldana might win with only, my imagined odds of 60%. That's so low. No, I think that there's very easily could be an upset. And I think a film like Sugarcane might be the one that benefits from that, especially since it maybe takes a bit of a, it is about North America as a whole and their treatment of Indigenous people. It is especially critical of Canada and their treatment of Indigenous people using the residential school system. So I wouldn't surprise me if maybe that's a film that people feel a little bit more comfortable voting on and being like, yes, residential schools and the treatment of Indigenous people are bad. Watch this documentary. So that's my sort of, thought process here, where it's like 35% chance No Other Land, 15% Sugarcane. But these are just imagined odds. I didn't write this out. This is just me sort of talking about it. So it's a very soft one where if you as your Oscar ballot filler outer think that the politics of this might be a little too messy, I understand you may be picking a different one because the Academy won't go and award this film. I don't know if Porcelain War will win, just because the last 2 years they have given the best documentary to I'll say a Russian adjacent film, because last year was Navalny, which was about the opposition leader of Russia, and the year before was 20 Days in Mariupol, which was specifically about the front lines in Ukraine as Russia began their invasion into Ukraine. So I wonder if they don't want to do 3 years in a row picking a Russian Ukrainian themed documentary to be the winner. I don't know. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. But I don't know. But I agree with you for my favorite being Black Box Diaries. I really appreciated that film. I liked the way you were describing it. The guts it takes to investigate your own assault because no one else will take it seriously. That's dark and depressing. And the fact that she basically removes herself from the situation and goes, okay, I'm an investigative reporter. How do I get the facts here? Who do I need to talk to? And how do I conduct these interviews like they're not talking about me on the worst night of my life? And I think that was such a bold and courageous decision that I really liked it. And I actually strongly am considering picking up the book. I don't know if there's an English translation of it or not, where it's just called Black Box. I would love to sort of read it as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I absolutely agree with Black Box Diaries, and we'll see how political the documentary feature category, how they want to be that night.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where I think it's easier to look back a few years down the road and understand the thought process, where in the moment you're often just like, what the hell? What's going on? But yeah, let us talk about a best original song in what is, in my estimation, one of the weakest years. I've often hated this category, not because I don't think they should be recognizing songs, but because the Academy's taste is often trash.
Yes.
And this year is no exception. So there's so many better songs they could have nominated. Like they could have nominated "Compress Repress" from Challengers, but they ignored that movie. They could have nominated any number of songs from Twisters, but they ignored that movie. They disqualified the Better Man song because parts of it came from an earlier song, because of course they were going to disqualify that song. Or just like, oh, what the hell are you doing, Academy? I think by virtue of the fact that Amelia Perez has 2 nominations, it's probably still winning, and it's going to be El Mal, which is we talked about how Zoe Saldana was the best part of Amelia Perez. This is probably the best scene in Amelia Perez, which coincidentally is Zoe Saldana's song in the movie. So that's my rationale. But how funny would it be if Diane Warren finally wins an Oscar? I know I would hate it, but it would be funny.
Yes.
uh, and easily, by far, the best song of this group, by far, is Like a Bird from Sing Sing. It's just too quiet and reserved to win at the Oscars, unfortunately. And considering no one saw this movie means it's not getting voted
Yeah.
on. I'm shocked it even got a nomination, frankly.
Me too. Yeah, I think this will definitely go to El Mal, which I think is maybe the only good song in Amelia Perez, primarily because
Yep.
of Zoe Saldana just fully committing to this. I mean, if the controversies catch up to Amelia Perez, they may go with the journey from Six Triple Eight,
Mm-hmm.
and then finally give Diane Warren her Oscar and hopefully never nominate her ever again. But because she pretty much knows everyone in that nomination branch, they will continue to nominate her every year um, for reasons I just don't understand. But yeah, Like a Bird for Sing Sing, that should be the one that should win, but it won't. I mean, my personal pick would be Ain't No Love in Oklahoma from Twisters, because that song is
Mm-hmm.
just way too much fun. And I mean, I enjoyed it, and I do not even like country music, and I'm like, that song's great.
Yeah, that whole soundtrack just absolutely slapped. I loved it.
I mean, my father is a meteorologist, and he hated the original Twisters. I mean, he can go on legendary rants on how scientifically inaccurate that movie is. And then recently, at his most recent meteorologist conference, they had a someone who worked on the film, their meteorologist consultant, and he stated you can hear the seething in the room from how scientifically inaccurate it was. I mean, I texted my mom. I'm like, Mom, did a vein pop out of his head? And she's like, maybe.
So what you're saying is meteorologists don't know how to have fun.
Yes.
No sense of humor.
Yeah, where he's like, where's the debris? They would have been killed by debris within 30 seconds. What? You can't stop an F5 tornado with whatever they launched into it. You can't do that. He's like, that shit don't work. Sorry if you hear my cat. She's currently laying on my lap right now.
She agrees with your father, apparently, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So,
All right. Well, let us go to original score. What are your thoughts on this category?
alrighty, hang on. Where is my page for? Alright, so for original score, I think that this will, I mean, the majority of the nominees in this category kind of disappointed me, primarily Wicked and Amelia Perez. Like, I do not understand why Dune was disqualified for score, but Wicked was able to get in. Um, but I think that this will most likely be The Brutalist. I really enjoyed the score for The Brutalist. I think it's very unique and different. It's not your stereotypical kind of score that you would expect for a film like this. Um, so I think Brutalist will most likely take it home. My personal pick for score, I think would also probably be The Brutalist, maybe The Wild Robot. Because yeah, The Wild Robot that got me in the fields, feels in the end of it. I think Conclave could do a potential spoiler. Like if Conclave takes a score, then I think we are going to be in for a very interesting night. Um, but yeah, I think the Brutalist will most likely take this home.
Yeah. I sort of view it as a two-horse race between Brutalist and Conclave. I would love it if Volker Bertelmann got a second straight Oscar because his score is so good in
Hmm.
Conclave. But I agree. I think the Brutalist is probably the one winning. That score is terrific. Like the theme in that still lives rent-free in my head. I still, can hear it playing because it is so good. And I've inserted the score a couple times into the podcast, and I always enjoy re-listening to bits and pieces of it. It's a fantastic work. I Yeah, so I think the Brutalist will win. I don't. I think it can sort of go either way. This might be one of the ones where if Brutalist is winning, it might help it along to Best Picture, um, or maybe Conclave winning helps Anora win Best Picture. I don't know, but I also want Conclave to win. I really loved it, although I can't fault you for picking the Brutalist because it is right there. It's like a 1A 1B situation for me.
Yeah, and I am absolutely just completely devastated that Challengers was not nominated. That's the best score of the year and
Yes.
just absolutely unique. And yeah, I listened to it while I work out.
Yeah, it's got the tempo there. It's so shocking to me. Like I expected challengers basically to get blanked out, but I expected the score to still get a nomination just because the Academy seems to really love Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Like it seems like almost every year they've gotten a nomination since they came on the scene for doing The Social Network.
Yeah, so
Shocking stuff.
absolutely shocking. I'll never forgive him.
That's fair. I don't blame you. All right, let's move over to best sound. And I think the narrative for this is going to carry out and cause Wicket to win. The fact that they recorded it live, that they were singing live. The Academy seems to, to use the fact that you have a cat on your lap, catnip to them. They did that with Les Mis when that film won best sound. It was because they were singing live and they love that. Oh my goodness, it's so talented. Isn't Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo such good singers? Oh my god. Yeah, so I think Wicked is going to win. With these technical ones, it's so hard to actually say it with any sort of confidence. So with the next few categories, really, if you feel strongly about thinking another one might win based on precursors, go with that. Like that's 100% fair to sort of ignore whatever advice I'm saying here. But I'm going to say my favorite of the group of nominees was Dune Part 2. I really liked what it did there. And I have a sneaky suspicion that you're also going to say that. But what are your thoughts on the category?
I mean, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think Wicked will most likely take this home. I mean, I definitely could see Dune Part Two taking this home because, the sound was just absolutely amazing. However, I do think the recency bias, because, they won this 3 years ago, I think that will most likely be held against Dune. So they might do we're going to give this to someone else. And so I think it will most likely be Wicked. Um, and my personal pick would be Dune. And then my personal would actually be The Substance.
Oh, okay.
I really like the sound and the substance was just very unique, especially like when their sound, their hearing would be kind of muted, kind of muffled. I think that
Mm-hmm.
was just such a unique cinematic experience, especially like when you'd hear kind of the sloshing in their heads was very unsettling to say the least. And then, obviously all like the sound of, the body, kind of falling apart and the just all of that was just absolutely amazing. And, given it's a smaller film, I kind of want to see a smaller film take sort of, you know, a category that typically goes to big blockbusters. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
my
It's a real shame it didn't get nominated
yeah,
because it does deserve it.
it absolutely, yeah, I'm devastated it did not get any, really not a lot of tech categories when it should have been nominated in a couple of techs. But yeah, my personal would actually be The Substance.
Nice. Okay, let's move on to best costume design. So, what are your thoughts on that one?
I think Wicked has this in the bag. I mean, I wasn't actually a really big fan of Wicked. I didn't get really on the hype. I mean, I saw the musical beforehand, and I actually wasn't that impressed by the musical. And then I went to the film, and I had a terrible theater experience, um, which did not help my view on the film. But I think from a tech perspective, like I thought the costumes were just absolutely remarkable and beautiful to look at. Just all the gowns, and then obviously all the uniforms were just beautiful, and I like fantasy costumes. So I think Wicked will absolutely win this. I think maybe Nosferatu could be a potential spoiler here. Um, but yeah, I think Wicked will win this, and I think it should win it.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. For me, I also think Wicked is probably going to win, mostly because I think this is. I don't think they're bold enough to pick something like Nosferatu or Conclave. They love period pieces, and while Wicked isn't really a period piece, it sort of exists out of time. It does sort of feel like it's both retro and futuristic at the same time. So I think that's what will have it behind its back helping it. And then in terms of who I'd want to win, I would pick Conclave. Yes, I know they're all basically just wearing variations of the same cardinal uniform, but I think they did such a great job with that and helping to build this world and giving each of them different subtle touches to influence to show what part of the world they're from and how the Cardinals in that region dress, I think is all very interesting, and they do a great job with that. So I really sort of appreciate the costume design in Conclave.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Okay, so the next category that we're going to do is makeup and hairstyling. And much like how some of the acting categories seem pretty locked in, I think it's pretty locked in that the substance is going to win here, specifically for the Eliza Sue at the end. That's really what it is. Well, there's a whole bunch of other great stuff, the sort of aging look that they give Demi Moore as the film goes on. Some of the body horror stuff is just really intense and hard to look at the way they show us that. So I think there's a lot going on here, and often this award is most hair and makeup, and I would say of the group of nominees, the substance represents the most hair and makeup of the group too, and it's the best. So it's also my want. I really liked it. It would be really cool for it to win here. I think it did a great job. Yeah, so I think it's a clean sweep for me for want and think. What about you?
Yep, I absolutely agree. Makeup seems to be the one area that horror actually does really well in.
Yeah.
I mean, American Werewolf in London was kind of like one of the first winners, and um, you know, uh, The Fly with Jeff Goldblum, another huge winner. So this is the one area where horror actually does well, and The Substance, being the absolute perfection of body horror that it is, should absolutely win this. I mean, I showed this movie to my mother, who absolutely hates blood and guts, and her reaction throughout the entire Eliza Sue was just absolutely priceless.
Mm-hmm. Also shocking because we've got two horror movies in this category, so
Yes.
like horror is really representing this year.
Yep. Horror, I know science fiction, like anything with heavy prosthetics seems to do very well. I mean, the big snub last year was Guardians of the Galaxy not getting anything,
Yes.
which was just very upsetting. But yeah, I mean, heavy prosthetics, they will always pretty much win the day for makeup.
Mm-hmm. I also find this category very interesting because more often than not, usually after the Oscars happen, we sort of learn what went on behind the scenes to make this hair and makeup special effects, and sort of I feel like this is the one category where the Academy is ahead of the game, where they are often rewarding advances in technology and in how they are doing it. So that, a lot of people complained about the whale winning, but the reason why the whale won for best hair and makeup was because they perfected the art of 3D printing prosthetics to help speed up the design and be able to make multiple copies of the prosthetic work with exacting detail. And that's why it won, not just because it was the main character in a prosthetic suit. So that's the sort of stuff that I love hearing about afterward, where it sort of puts the win in a different light, where you go, oh, wow, that's really crazy that the Academy is actually rewarding innovation. And so, like, I haven't heard much about how they did the hair and makeup on the five films that are nominated here, but it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if we hear a bit more about what they did to make the prosthetic work and the substance and how that stood out so differently, or what they were doing in a different manner, or Nosferatu, things like that. I'd love to hear about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then, would you also agree that the substance was who you want to win?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, nice. All right, well, let us go with production design. So, did I start that last category or did you? I can't remember now.
I believe you did. So I'll go ahead and
Okay,
go.
so it's your turn.
Um,
Yeah.
so very much so like costume, I believe Wicked has this in the bag. And honestly, I think it may be my personal pick. I'm kind of torn between a couple of the nominees. But I think the production design in Wicked's absolutely remarkable. I mean, the sheer scale of the sets that they built from Oz to Shiz University was just absolutely remarkable. I mean, I think the favorite set was the library for Dancing Through Life. Like that was a absolutely remarkable set on how, and especially how they utilized that set in the film. But I really, enjoyed Wicked. I mean, it really immersed you in Oz that had that both that fantastical, fantasy to it, but also that sort of grounded reality to it. So I think this will go to Wicked, and it's sort of a three-way tie between Wicked, Nosferatu, and Dune Part Two for me. So personally, I always like period pieces, especially in terms of, period pieces and the replication of period pieces on film. So I really enjoyed the production design of Nosferatu, from Count Orlok's castle to I don't know the name of the city, but I know it's in northern Germany. I thought that was just absolutely beautiful immersion, and then the beautiful science fiction sets that Dune was able to build was remarkable. I mean, the stuff on the Harkonnen home planet was just absolutely amazing, just completely alien and such a unique look that gives a real kind of tangibility to how chemical and plastic that world is.
Hmm.
So it's sort of a three-way tie for me, but I absolutely think Wicked has this in the bag.
Okay, fair. Yeah, I'm gonna differ from you here a little bit. I think this might be one where Dune maybe sneaks in a surprise win. Based on everything that you were saying, I completely agree with. I love the look of it all. It's so varied and vast and beautiful to look at, and they did a great job with it. And so I would be very happy with a Dune win. In terms of my favorite, I'm going back with Conclave, the way that they sort of recreated the Vatican and all these different sort of aspects of this world where these cardinals are living in during the vote for the new pope. I thought they did a great job with that. I agree with you. I think I actually didn't care for the Wicked production design. I think that's more a comment on its cinematography and CGI that I didn't care for, that I'm overlapping that with the production design. But I think this might be one of the strongest categories in terms of just isolating the work that goes on to build these worlds for all five of these movies. I think they did a really good job of nominating the correct films this year.
Oh yeah, I think my personal picks I think are pretty much the same. Oh yeah, they are for what the Academy
There you
nominated.
go.
So I mean, yeah, they this is one of the categories where I'm like, okay, they actually got everybody who should be nominated are.
It's so rare that that actually happens.
Yeah.
All right, now let us go to animated feature. And this is a really interesting category because it sort of seems like it's a two-horse race between The Wild Robot and Flow. I'm not sure who is going to come out on top. The fact that both films have nominations in other categories, I think helps it. Like, if The Wild Robot was only nominated here and not in score, and Flo had the two nominations, I was like, oh, well, Flo would be the presumed winner. But the fact that they're both in two categories really helps both of their cases, and I don't know how that's going to turn out. So I'm going to stick with The Wild Robot just because voters of the Academy, if you're the way it sort of works is it's mostly American people that are
Hmm.
admitted. So you have a lot of people who are people that work at Disney and Pixar and DreamWorks. And the fact that there is that Inside Out is not the front runner this year, I think a lot of the local industry people are probably going to coalesce around the DreamWorks film and sort of give it the win there. So that's my sort of rationale for The Wild Robot. But I would not be surprised in the slightest if Flo does end up winning. That said, my favorite of the group is probably I'm gonna say I think should win is Memoir of a Snail. I think it is absolutely stunning. My favorite of the group is Wallace and Gromit, but Memoir of a Snail is equally great, and I think would be a very deserving winner in my eyes. I know this is a category you said you haven't seen all of the films, so I guess talk about it to the best of your ability.
Yeah, so the only one I haven't seen is Wallace and Gromit. I've seen everything else. Um,
Okay.
Part of me really wants to see this itty bitty film from Latvia take Oscar. I want to see this small film just beat out these industry giants, beat Netflix, beat DreamWorks, beat Disney and
Mm-hmm.
Pixar, and a previous Oscar winner, because I think that would be huge, and I think that would start to indicate a right direction for the animation branch because they typically pick whatever their granddaughter's favorite film of the week is.
Mm-hmm.
And given the direction of the animation branch over the past couple of years, they've become a little bit they've been starting to move away from just defaulting it to Disney slash Pixar. So they did Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio 2 years ago, and then last year, The Boy and the Heron did the upset against Across the Spider-Verse. So, and I think given that the Academy has become very internationally diverse, especially among Europe, that I think a lot of that international group will be voting for Flow. And especially given that they dropped Flow on Max last week, a week before voting ended, and the fact that it immediately became number one on Max instantly is huge. So I really would like to see Flo win just because it would indicate not only one a direction, the course correction of the animation branch where it's like, okay, they're no longer giving it to the big studio tentpole animation features and they're starting to look at smaller independent films. And plus, I own a cat, so that's some of the biasy. And trust me, I was having an anxiety attack throughout the whole 90 minutes of Flow. So
Mm-hmm.
but who I think should win would actually be Memoir of a Snail. That got me in so many tears, like happy tears,
Yeah.
sad tears. Absolutely beautiful film, and it is an absolute shame that it has been completely overlooked this award season among critic circles and just, I mean, everywhere. It's been completely overlooked, which is very sad. But I would be absolutely ecstatic if Flo takes this home.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking at the history of the Best Animated Film Oscar category, only three times has a non-big American studio won. With two going to Studio Ghibli and then one of them going to Aardman.
Hmm.
So Flo is facing a very uphill battle against the way the Academy normally votes,
It's
unfortunately.
like I think will was it Janice pull off a drive my car situation? Maybe
Mm.
because they have. I mean, the director, God, I forgot his name, or I'm afraid of mispronouncing it. His social media page is like completely blown up. Um,
Yeah, yeah, he's really
and
funny.
he's really been using that social media to market people to watch this film. So I really want to see Flo win this.
All right. Well, what is your thoughts on best visual effects? That's the next category we have up.
Um, so I think this will probably be the only category that Dune will win, sadly, or at least a
Ooh, okay.
guaranteed lock for a win. And it's absolutely rightfully deserved. I mean, the visual effects in Dune Part 2 are absolutely remarkable. The all the shots in space to the snail, not snails, the giant worms,
You're thinking Memoir of a
still
Snail still.
thinking of more of a snail. Just barreling through the desert and eating a bunch of sardaukar for a lunch is just absolutely wonderful and great. However, part of me really wants to see Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes win this. Um,
Oh.
None of the Planet of the Apes films have actually won an Oscar for visual effects, which is a heinous crime. Like this franchise has absolutely revolutionized motion capture effects. Obviously with the Planet of the Apes trilogy that came out in the mid 2010s, and now with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I mean, this looks absolutely remarkable. I mean, just the facial features and they've really perfected, they really make these apes look very humanized and expressionistic while also still having that ape feel to them. And just the environments they were able to create are absolutely amazing. And I would really like to see this franchise get its due because it is a crime that it has not won an Oscar for visual effects. No offense to Dune. Um,
Yeah, that's fair. I think I liked the visual effects in the earlier Planet of the Apes movies a little bit better, just because it seemed like they were doing more interacting with human sets. So I think it was a little too CGI heavy for me at times. Which, not to say that it was bad, it's just I think that it blended in a little bit better in some of the earlier films. But that said, I do agree. I think Dune is the far and away front runner to win here, and it would be a very deserving win. They do a great job, in ways that, like, obviously we know the sandworm is CGI and visual effects. We know that, but I think there's a lot of subtle work in this film that probably people don't realize, and the way that they're capturing it. Um, I would like, I don't know if this will ever be the case, but I would love either to be a split of Oscars between visual effects in terms of the way in the film industry they call it on sets is visual effects and special effects. Special effects are practical effects. I would love an award for that because I think, right now we conflate the two in visual and special effects, and I think we should be awarding both sides of the aspect because, they work together in tandem. There's a practical effect and then there's a visual effect to make it look bigger and better and all these different things. So that'd be really cool to maybe if one day they do that, or if they put an emphasis on best visual effects also includes practical effects and they start nominating more films with practical effects, would be really cool to see. But then my want to win is also Dune, although I'm going to give a little shout out here to Better Man. I did not expect this movie to work as well as it did. The trailers made this movie look really stupid, but I was blown away by it. I cried multiple times, and the way that they've advertising is Robbie Williams talking about it, like, yeah, after the first 5 minutes, you're not even going to notice it's a monkey, and it's very true. You sort of forget that he's a monkey, and the sort of rationale of why he is portrayed this way makes sense when you watch the movie, and I think they did a really great job with it, and I think it suits it. So I just want to give a shout out here. It's probably my second favorite of the group, but still deserves a shout out.
yeah, I mean, Better Man was definitely one of the biggest surprises. I was not expecting that film to be that good. Like, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
holy shit, this came out of nowhere. And honestly, a little bit of an unpopular opinion, but Better Man is better than Wicked. Um,
Yeah, I agree.
so, but yeah, I mean, just every regard, I do think Better Man is a better musical. But yeah, I was genuinely surprised by Better Man and the visual effects. I mean, they did a remarkable job with the ape Robbie Williams.
Yes, yes. All right, well, let's move on to our next category. We're getting closer to finishing out here, and we're going to talk about film editing. I think this might be Anora's to win. I know it faces some strict competition from both Conclave and the Brutalist. I think the Brutalist being 3.5 hours is going to hinder it, especially since I know a lot of people probably seems to be the general consensus, and I feel the same way, is the first half is amazing, and by the time the intermission goes, you go, wow, I can't believe the movie's half over already. I can't believe it's been over an hour and a half. This is crazy. But the second half really lags, and I think that has to do a lot with the editing, and I think it's going to suffer here, so I don't think it's going to win. So my pick is going to be Anora because of this sort of frenetic energy this film has, where the first half, you're in such a daze of this, wanderlust and love that's going on and all this passion that's going on. And then the second half is a completely different tonal shift of chaos. And they work so well together, where they're sort of two sides of the same coin, where we're experiencing very different emotions, but for the very same reasons of confusion and not understanding the situation. So I think that's a great job there. My own personal choice would be Conclave, my personal criteria for editing usually involves tension, and I think Conclave has the most tension and suspense of this group of nominees, and so that would be my rationale for picking it as my favorite. But what about you, Elizabeth?
So editing, I think that this is actually more so of a two-way race between Anora and Conclave. However,
Okay.
given the history of the Academy, they tend to go with the sort of flashiest editing, for either for best or for worse. So I think of this category, I think maybe the sort of the flashiest editing, I think would actually be Conclave. I think that is very sharply edited. They really build the tension and suspense with every single moment, with every single action, just absolutely remarkably. And it has a very clear vision of what it wants to be and what it wants to do. So I do think Conclave can absolutely win this, and I think it probably should win this. I mean, I think Anora could do a big upset, or I wouldn't say upset, but I do think it could be the little sneak in. And if Anora does take editing, that's looking very good for Anora that night. And Sean Baker might run away with 4 Oscars that night. Um, but yeah, I think Conclave will most likely win this, and I think Conclave should win this. I think the second half of the Brutalist kind of kills the ending a little bit. Like, same as you, I did kind of fall off towards the end of the Brutalist. Like, when I went to go see it at TIFF, and I feel a little ashamed admitting this, but I did kind of fall asleep during the second half. Um, well, to be fair, I was running on like it was my second night in a row running on 3 hours of sleep, and this showing was first thing in the morning, and my body's like, it is nap time, and I was kind of in and out throughout the second half of The Brutalist. And then when I finally went to go see it again, I didn't fall asleep. But yeah, it's that second half of The Brutalist I think kind of hurts it a bit. I do think it drags out for a little too long. And this is someone who regularly does a Lord of the Rings trilogy marathon like every year or so in one sitting. So, but yeah, I think this will most likely be Conclave, and I think Conclave should win this.
Amazing. Well, I'm glad that we're in that same boat. Loving the look of the edit for Conclave. All right, let's go to our last feature film category, and that is Best International Film. So I'm gonna let you do the heavy lifting for this category because this is going to be probably the craziest category of the night.
Yep, absolutely. So it will be a question of how badly did all the controversies surrounding Amelia Perez hurt the film. Because if all those controversies did not happen, Amelia Perez would actually have a very good chance of actually winning Best Picture. But because all those controversies, it completely stripped it away its chances of winning Best Picture. But the one area where it does have a very good chance would be international. And oh boy, I would absolutely do not want to see this win international feature. And I think once SAG happens, it will give us an idea of whether or not it will, because if it doesn't, it will definitely go to I'm Still Here, which I would be very happy with I'm Still Here winning it. But I think like if Ariana Grande walks away with SAG, I think would start be raising the flags that Amelia Perez may not actually win international feature, and that I'm Still Here will come in with the upset, which I would be very happy to see. But as of right now, I would say that it's still Amelia's to lose. But given this sort of very last minute surge of I'm Still Here, it might actually walk away with the win. And I would really want
Mm-hmm.
to see it win. So they might pull off a Parasite for Best Picture, where they just kind of come up very last second and take home the Oscar. So, but yeah, I would, right now I'm saying Amelia Perez, but I think maybe in a week it might be looking like I'm Still Here.
All right, and then what is your favorite of the category?
I would say favorite, I would say I'm Still Here.
Okay.
It's, I mean, I was very happy to see Flo here. I think that's a great step for animation. for animation to get, recognized in other categories besides the one. So, but yeah, I think I'm Still Here would be my pick. I think that is an absolutely remarkable, political drama just set within the confines of a family. And Fernanda Torres is a tour de force in that, keeping, that entire film together with her performance.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm Still Here. I would love to see it win, and it should win. But as of right now, I would say Amelia Perez. We'll see in a week after SAG. But yeah, I'm saying right now Amelia Perez still has it. But yeah, I'm torn.
I hear you. I am under the feeling right now of go big or go home with my picks, and I am saying I'm Still Here. Comes in and swoops in and takes the award. The reason why is because I think while the country technically wins the award, the person that goes up on stage to accept it and gives a speech is the director. And it wouldn't surprise me if, because they know it would be Jacques Audiard that goes up, that he is the one that they are punishing for this, and don't want to see him win an Oscar. So they are going to go with I'm Still Here. So that's my pick. I'm not super confident about it, but that's my go big or go home prediction of the Oscars, that I think this could happen. I know it's not even that crazy of an upset to predict it. But like you said, we'll sort of see. By the time this episode comes out, we'll kind of have a bit of a clearer picture. I try to wait to do this until the very last moment, but I gotta put this out at least a week before the Oscars, so it's tough.
Understandable.
Yeah. Overall, I was kind of disappointed by this category this year. Normally, international is my favorite category, and it will have at least 3 or 4 of my favorite Oscar nominated films of the year. And it's a whole bunch of, yeah, they're fine movies. Like I quite liked I'm Still Here. Girl with the Needle was pretty good. And then the very last film that I watched, basically of all of the films except for the 5 shorts I haven't seen, was The Seed of the Sacred Fig. And that was my moment of, aha, there is the movie I've been looking for. What an incredible piece of filmmaking this is. It is so bold. The first half, I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, I sort of see the world they're setting up. I'm sort of curious of where this is going to go. And then the back half, I don't want to spoil this for anyone who hasn't seen it, but once the inciting incident has sort of kicked off of what the resulting actions happen, I was absolutely hooked. And this is just a very powerful piece of filmmaking, a piece of protest art coming out of Iran, which Iranian cinema has always produced some of the best protest art. So I absolutely love this film. If this is a movie that was not on your radar, I highly recommend that people check this out. It is so good. So especially if you enjoy the politics of I'm Still Here, I think people will enjoy the politics of The Seed of the Sacred Fig.
I absolutely agree. I saw The Seed of the Sacred Fig at TIFF, and the director did a Q&A afterwards. It was virtual, but it was just absolutely remarkable to see him, because he's been in prison. I mean, I believe he started writing this when he was in prison, and, filming all of this in secret, and now sadly having to flee the country for his own safety. But the fact that this film exists is absolutely remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved to have seen Kneecap get a nomination in here.
Oh, yes,
I
yes.
absolutely love that. I love the energy that film had.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite movies of the year, and it got shortlisted. It was one of the 15 final films that they named could be eligible to be nominated, and they took the coward's way out and did not nominate Kneecap, which shame on the Academy for that as well.
Yeah, absolute shame. And it should have been nominated for song for Sick in the
Mm-hmm.
Head.
Mm-hmm.
But
You're
it's
not wrong.
sadly did not.
All right, we're down to the last 3 categories, which are the shorts, and we're going to kind of speed through this a little bit. Going to start with live action short. It's so hard to predict these. So once again, if you're not liking what we're saying here, literally throw a dart at your ballot, and that's the best choice because who knows how it's going to go. My movie I think will win is Alien or Alien. not quite sure how they're pronouncing the title here. Um, it's the only American film of the crop, and especially in live action short, that seems to take precedent. Where I guess voters go, I didn't have to read subtitles, so I'm voting for this one, which is a bit of a shame because it was not my favorite of the group. My favorite of the group was I'm Not a Robot. I was recently on a podcast, the What a Picture podcast, and we did a different kind of Oscar draft than what I did. So if you listen to mine, this is going to be a very different kind of Oscar draft. And we talked about how we love the concept of I'm Not a Robot, even if it didn't fully work in the end. It's the only comedy, quote unquote, comedy of the group, and so it's one that I enjoyed because of the fact that it was a bit different than the others. I know you were saying you haven't seen much of the shorts. Have you seen any of the live action shorts?
So the only one I have seen is Alien, or I believe that's how it's pronounced. Sorry if I'm butchering it. So that's the only live action short I have seen. I have not seen any of the other ones, so I'm not particularly qualified to say who should win this. According to Gold Derby, everyone has the man who could not remain silent as their predicted winner. But yeah, I really don't know who would take this.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the timeliness of the politics of Alien, it might do it favor. Because it's a short film about ICE raids, arresting and deporting people who are working towards legal citizenship in the U.S., which I know is a very hot button issue and one that I think will be the Oscars' way to give a middle finger to the current administration.
Definitely.
All right, let us go to documentary shorts. I haven't seen these, so I've got no real thoughts on it. I am going to go with who I think will win is I Am Ready, Warden. I'm usually pretty good at picking these films based on the title. I think that usually is a good indicator. And I Am Ready, Warden is such a strong and bold title, and the fact that it's about the prison. The prison industrial complex and the way that works in the United States, I think that's going to have viewers wanting to pick that. So that's literally my only rationale.
So I have seen I'm Ready Warden and Incident, and to be honest, I don't know who will win this one. Um, but I did like Incident. I really like that one, and again, that one's also very politically charged regarding police brutality. But I did not like I Am Ready Warden. Um, that one, I am like out of the whole prison industrial complex, you chose, how do I say this piece of shit to be your focal piece. Um, it's just where I'm like, sir, I don't care, you're about to die. I have no sympathy for you. And yeah, I mean, I commend the person, the victims who are able to forgive him, but I'm like, the fact that the film is very manipulative into trying to get you to feel forgiveness for this guy it just put a terrible taste in my mouth. I'm like, bro, you stabbed a guy nearly 30 times over $2. You don't have an ounce of sympathy for me.
Mm.
So yeah, so
So what you're saying is that one is definitely winning then.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't. It's so hard to tell with the short categories, and I've heard the same criticism of that. By the time this episode comes out, I will have seen that, so I will be able to form my own opinion. But based on how you and I have agreed on basically everything, I'm probably going to feel the same way as you here.
Yep.
All right, and then lastly, the animated shorts. Were you able to catch up with those?
So I've only watched one, and that was Wander to Wonder. And oh boy, that was kind of nightmarish material for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that one was very good. I heard someone on Letterboxd described it as Yorgos Lanthimos doing something with A24, and I'm like, yep, that sounds about right. Um, However, given the history of the animation, winners in the past, they typically go for the worst of the bunch. And from what I've heard, Beautiful Men is not that good. I heard it's okay. I know that one is about a bunch of men going to Turkey to go get some hair transplants regarding
Mm-hmm.
male pattern baldness. So
Mm-hmm.
a universal rally that men can get behind. So I think that will most likely win. I haven't seen it, so I mean I can't give my personal pick, but I think Beautiful Men will most likely win. I mean, it's nice to see a film be about body positivity for guys. So that might be one commendable fact. But yeah, I think it will most likely be Beautiful Men. I mean, that's currently what's number one on Gold Derby. So that's what I'm basing a lot of this off of. So, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I enjoyed all five of the shorts. I thought they were excellent and unique in the way they animated. Yeah, Wander to Wonder is an absolute fever dream. The way I describe it, sort of similar to the way you described it, but I said Ari Aster trying to make a family film.
Oh
And that
yeah,
was the
definitely.
result. It is nightmare fuel for sure, but very entertaining nightmare fuel. I also think it's going to win. I'm not super confident about it, but I could see Beautiful Men being a bit of a spoiler there. But I am picking Wonder to Wonder to win, and my favorite of the group was one called Magic Candies, which was just a very sweet Japanese short film too. But yeah, there you have it. These are our picks for who we think are going to win at the Oscars this year. We're pretty similar. We only differ on a couple. I will try. I wrote everything down of who we think will win, and I'll announce how the two of us did on the wrap up podcast and give the imaginary trophy to either you or me. How does that sound to you?
That sounds wonderful.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on today. It was a real pleasure having you join the show for the first time. I thought that was a really fun conversation we had.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on. I mean, this is the first time I've ever done a podcast, so a little
Woo!
terrifying, but yeah, I
You
had a
crushed
great
it.
time.
Amazing. Well, if people want to find more of your work, what is the best place for them to go? And what do you have going on these days?
So if you want to find more of my work, you can go to the celluloidcorrespondent.com. That's my official website where I post all my reviews for films and television series. I do essays from time to time, and I've done interviews with celebrities and filmmakers before. So if you want to check those out, you can check them there. Those interviews and reviews are also available on my Instagram of the same name, the Celluloid Correspondent, and you can also find me on Letterboxd. So
Amazing. I will make sure to link to those. Do you have anything coming out this week or just recently that you specifically want to direct people's attention to?
Um, well, for me, it's let's see. Let's see. I recently just finished up Apple Cider Vinegar, which is on Netflix. It is a mini series chronicling the rise and fall of Bella Gibson, who was a wellness influencer who scammed the whole world into thinking she had cancer, but she didn't. So that stars, hang on, I have to pull up her name, make sure I'm
It's
pronouncing
Caitlin
it.
Devers, right?
Yes, Caitlin Devers. And I think that is a very good performance to set her up for how much I will hate her in The Last of Us.
Oh.
So, because oh boy, we have The Last of Us coming out. But
Hmm.
I know right now for television, I've been watching The White Lotus and Yellow Jackets, and I just started One Day on Netflix, which is Robert De Niro's television acting debut.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Nice. Well, yeah, people should definitely go and check all of that out. Next week, we will recap the Oscars and reveal who the winner was for our Oscar draft and for our predictions here. Who do you think had the best team of that group? Head on over to Instagram and vote for the best team between myself, Thomas Stoneham Judge, Alex Watson, and Brody Cottenham. I'll also be publishing my yearly If We Were Oscar Voters blog post where myself and Rachel Ho will reveal who we would have picked for the nominees in each category. So visit ContraZoom.com to read reviews, blog posts, and more. This has been a That Shelf podcast. Visit thatshelf.com for more great film discourse. Follow the show on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at ContraZoomPod. What do you think of our predictions? leave me a comment on Spotify or send us an email. Thank you to Eric and Kevin Smale for the theme music and to Stephanie Pryor for the logo design. If you like to listen to podcasts on YouTube, we do post all episodes there as well. And if you really like the show, consider tipping us on coffee. Thanks for checking us out.